Okay, so in this video, I have a reference photo that I am using some sunglasses, some just Ray-Ban aviator style sunglasses, and I am drawing them just using a 4H pencil here to get started. What you'll notice is that I'm using really light pencil lines to try to plot out the shape. So I'm pressing very softly, moving the pencil around the paper a little bit. I'm not worried about being too exact here. I'm trying to get basic shapes. And you could see me kind of going back and forth like off the page and then coming back on the page and holding my pencil up to the drawing itself. And what I'm doing there is I'm kind of trying to get a basic measurement. So I want to try to keep my proportions as accurate as I can, and I want to try to get the width matched up to the height pretty accurately. So to do that, I'm measuring with my pencil a little bit, and I'm coming back trying to be close. I know that I'm not going to get it exact, and I'm not going to hold up a ruler and try to get an exact number, but what I am going to do is just try to get it as close as I can. This helps me out to keep my proportions pretty close. What I'm doing now is I'm starting to darken up the shapes that I like. And you may even see me come in briefly with an eraser and just clean up some edges. I wasn't worried about erasing lines off. Instead, what I was trying to do is clean up some of like my measurement marks that I had put down and some of the extra lines that were just kind of in the way so that I could start to darken up and clean up some of the stuff. I still haven't switched pencils at this point. I'm still using just the 4H pencil, which is a very light pencil. But I am going through and beginning to press a little bit firmer with this 4H pencil and darken up some of the spots. I'm adding a little bit of detail as I go. I'm starting to do a little bit of under shading to where like I shade in and get some of the areas where it's going to eventually be darker. I kind of want to plot that out. I'm starting to get some of my light values added in too. So when you're putting your light values in, it's good to have a light pencil like this, like a 4H, where I can press soft and get some really light pencil lines. I am primarily darkening from left to right because I'm right-handed, so that kind of keeps my hand out of the pencil marks pretty well and allows me to keep from smearing and getting my hand really dirty as I go. If I start to do that, then I'll wipe off my hand, clean up the paper if I start to make any smudges right away. That way I don't continually make it worse. So you'll see in this area, I'm starting to put more of the shading in. I've started to put a couple of darker details in where I'll like hold my pencil a little bit different. I'll press a little harder. I'll make some of the darker marks. And I'm still measuring. I'm still checking things, just not as frequently because I have the overall shape kind of laid in. And as I redefine things, I might grab my eraser briefly, like clean up the old edges, the old lines that I didn't like as much. And you can see how my drawing is progressively getting darker. Now that I have most everything laid in, basic shading, you can see I'm starting to really press hard now. I'm really defining the edges. So where before they were kind of softly added in, you can see I'm actually holding my pencil more at this point like I would be drawing, or writing, I'm sorry, instead of drawing. And when I do that, I'm able to get a little bit more firm pressure on the very tip of the pencil. This allows me to get those darker lines in. When I'm drawing and I'm shading, you'll see that my pencil, the way I hold my pencil is a little different. This is something that I've kind of chosen to do on my own, and you can see it here. I'm holding the pencil between my my index finger and my middle finger, and then I'm putting my thumb on the pencil too. And I'm kind of going back and forth at this point where I hold it the same as I would if I was writing, and then I switch to the other hold. Sometimes I even hold the pencil kind of like flat with multiple fingers up against my palm. The different ways I hold the pencil can change the angle of the pencil itself. So if the tip of the pencil is pointing straight down and the pencil itself is at a vertical angle, like it is in this part right here, I'm able to get a lot of pressure right on the very tip of the pencil. When I am trying to shade things in, it's better for my pencil angle to be flatter, so closer towards horizontal. When it's closer to horizontal, I use, especially with this type of pencil, I use the entire length of the graphite from the tip up until where it meets with the wood. And so I'm covering a larger area of the paper with the pencil itself. And this allows me to fill area in faster. And it also gives me the opportunity to press a little bit softer because when all your pressure is to a really small point, like the tip of a needle or a pen, right? You can apply a lot of pressure to that little fine tip because all of the pressure from your whole hand is directed to a very small point. When you spread that out, so I use the flatter area of the pencil, the same amount of pressure actually applies less to the paper itself because you're spreading it out over a larger area. This equates to like if you were on the ice and the ice started to break, your goal should be to lay yourself flat, spread out, because you're not going to fall through the ice as easily because you're dispersing the energy of gravity across a larger surface. So we're doing the same thing with our pencil here. And you can see I'm adding more fine details now. At this point, I actually have switched over to a number 2B pencil. This pencil is a lot darker, so I'm able to shade things in a lot better. I'm starting to get my darker values here. You can see the darker values on the lenses are starting to show up. I'm adding some darker values into my detail areas. Again, I'm switching back and forth. I'm using a different grip on the pencil in various areas. So I want to try to get a big value range. I'm going to leave plain white paper in my highlighted areas, and you can see that I'm starting to get a bigger variety of different values, right? So you are in your drawings, we worked off of a 6-part value scale where 0 was our plain white paper, and then each box progressively gets darker up until we get to number 5, which is as dark as we can make it with whatever pencil we're using. So this gives us a big variety. I'm probably working on a slightly larger value scale than that. But the more you practice with the pencil, the more you can get those fine, light values by pressing soft, and darker values by pressing harder. Also, when you start to use multiple pencils, like I started with a 4H, which is a very hard graphite and makes a very light line, and then I switched to a 2B. Now, these are the only 2 pencils I use in this particular drawing, but the differences are quite a bit, right? There's a big gap between those 2 pencils. So I'm able to get quite a bit darker using my 2B than I was my 4H. So I make some really light lines with the 4H and some pretty dark lines using the 2B. So we started to see this big value range that goes, from the earpieces on here, which are very dark, all the way to the faded out to plain white on the reflection of the surface of the lenses themselves. So we see the big variety happening here. the little fine details happening here. I'm using a writing style grip to add these fine details so that I can push firm and get very dark areas. And it helps to create that shiny surface. I add a little white here for the Ray-Ban, and then we're finished up.